And I want to share with you what you need to know now and what you need to be doing to be able to face your problems. Hi, I'm Rinde from AskRinde. Foreclosures are currently soaring, up over 13% from just a month ago in December. Unemployment is actually up now, with filings over 70,000 just within the last few days. And the coronavirus is changing the world and has changed the world as we know it. The recession is here. I know what crisis is. I've gone through crisis and I know how to navigate it. And I want to share with you what you need to know now and what you need to be doing to be able to face your problems. So what is crisis? Crisis is simply this: a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. Simply put, crisis is tragedy. Crisis and tragedy is something that I'm all too familiar with. This year, before the coronavirus hit and went viral and everyone started to talk about it, in February, I had the greatest tragedy of my life. And it's still something that's, too painful to really talk about and go into detail, but I can tell you that by God's grace and his help, I'm taking one day at a time and really just moving forward a step at a time. So I know what it's like to actually go through crisis, and I know how to stand in crisis, and by God's grace and help and wisdom, move through it. So aside from the panic and the chaos that's going on and everything that we see in the news, from not only shutdowns of cities all over the world, and also people basically, becoming jobless overnight, lack of supply, you can't get tissue, you can't get things that you would normally use on a daily basis, you can't get access to it, and more importantly, the fact that they don't have a cure for this thing yet, or they don't have seemingly control as to stopping it. There's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of uncertainty. For a lot of people, this is a reset. This is a setback, or what you call a disruption. This is when, there's a life shift and things go completely different than what people normally are used to. I don't think anyone expected this or anticipated this to happen as quickly as it did, and the way it's happening currently and the way it's rolling out. But I can share with you, I've been through so much tragedy and so many issues over the years that for me, this is not uncharted territory. I was there the morning of September 11th. I was under the building, the Tower 1, in the train underneath the building when the first plane hit. And I actually, the train was diverted to a few blocks away. And when I walked out, the second plane had just gone into the Tower 2. So I actually saw people falling. I saw, before the buildings went down, I was a few blocks away just looking up at the building. And I know what tragedy looks like. I know what horror looks like. I know what uncertainty looks like. I've also gone through 2 market changes. The 2008 financial crisis, I was in it. I shared my story bits with you guys where, I actually had business and my real estate business, and basically the market was all but wiped out. So I went through that. I also went through an industry change and saw something that I had built up into over $1 million business get wiped out like this within weeks. So I know what it's like to actually have the rug pulled out from under you. I also know what it's like to have numbing pain and numbing uncertainty and feeling helpless and hopeless. And I know what it's like to basically not know where your next meal is going to come from, not know where you're going to basically sleep, not know if things will be okay. I know exactly what that's like. And I can tell you for certain that with God's wisdom and grace, He will navigate you through. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned and some of the things that I've actually been able to do and use over the time, specifically in dealing with foreclosure, with your home, and also your credit, and navigating you through the process from point A to where you are right now, not knowing what you're going to do, to where you need to be. So we've seen a lot in the news recently where, the president and the government is floating solutions that they're thinking is going to help people. One of which is the fact that they recently suspended foreclosures and evictions, which is good. We have clients here in New Jersey and all around the country that we're helping that had sale dates, auction dates that were set. But then, with this actually moratorium that was put in place, this was pushed off. It's a good thing. It's not something that is not welcome for us, because for our clients it's helpful because it gives them a little bit more time. It gives us a little bit more time to navigate and help them get to out of the foreclosure and deal with the situation. But the only thing is that being that I've faced this before, I've seen and been in circumstances where I've seen band-aids put on things. I've seen things that are not real true solutions. And I can tell you, suspending foreclosures and evictions is not going to do anything. That's all it's going to do is kick the bucket down the road. I see that Trump is touting that as something that's a victory, and it's really welcome, and like I said, it's a good thing. But the only thing about it is this: if you're going to suspend and postpone evictions and foreclosures, how is that going to solve the real issue that we have here? This is a major problem. This is something that for the first time is affecting markets all around the world, is affecting every country in the world, and it's a complete shutdown in a sense where people are polarized and paralyzed, where you have cities like California that's on lockdown now. So when you're looking at these things, the dynamics of that have to do with people losing their jobs, businesses that have taken years to build up, like mine, that get turned and shut down in within a matter of days or weeks. And so basically, when you're looking at that, you're looking at a lot of lives being affected, and you're looking at a lot of disruption. And I want to share with you this, is that the problem is not so much as the storm, which is we're in the eye of the storm right now. The problem is the aftermath. It's what comes after. It's what's going to be the domino effect that this takes from years and really months and years from now, where you'll see these things play out. You'll see the damage that's been done. I've always shared with you all that my main recommendation for buying property is to buy multifamily property. And it's because of times like this. The people that are going to be affected the most with these current circumstances that we're in and the crisis that we're in are single family homeowners. Make no mistake about that, for sure. Because single family homeowner, all the burden of the property and the obligations on them. But now in this situation, more multifamily owners, developers, builders, landlords, everyone's going to be affected, because the people who are renting from you don't have jobs. I own property here, and I already have started talking to some of my people, and they're telling me, my restaurant closed down, my job closed down. So I'm already bracing and expecting that I'm going to have to deal with things come the first of the month, where whatever units that I have that are not able to pay, I have to figure out how to deal with it. And now here's the other dynamic. You have a thing where generally, if you're a proper landlord, you run a property management business, or you deal with real estate, you know that if a person doesn't pay, obviously the next thing is to file to be able to start the process for eviction because of non-payment. The only issue is that the courts now are going to be backed up, because the issue is that this is not a negligence. This is a domino effect. This is a national problem that we're dealing with. So you're going to have single-family homeowners affected. You're going to have landlords that are affected, because it's a domino effect. If a person doesn't have a job, they can't pay you. And if you go to try to file on them, the court will understand their position. So that's going to be delayed further. And so which means that it's going to force you into foreclosure. It's going to force you into a situation where your credit's going to be damaged. Your credit's going to be compromised. And worst of all, this is a major setback. So what I recommend, and what I'm seeing from my years of being in the business and going through different market turns, the most important thing that we can do, and the most important thing that I'm pushing for right now, is for them to suspend mortgage payments. That is the most credible and the most sane thing to do currently. But the thing about it is that the U.S. system is built differently than places like Italy or Spain or other places in the world. Canada, for example, who has suspended mortgage payments and suspended, obligations. Think about it. You have a situation where the world has shut down, where people can't leave their homes to go to work. People are polarized. People are basically trapped at home. They can't do things. And so if that's the case, if they can't get out and be able to do the things to be able to produce money to pay their obligation, what should happen is that everything should stop. We should actually have bills suspended. We should have mortgages suspended. We should have debt servicing suspended for the meantime, until this stuff gets situated and until we get to a place of semblance. But the problem is that from my expertise and my recollection and history, and been going through things, I was there September 11th, the aftermath, the 2008 collapse. I saw what happened, and I can tell you from dealing within the mortgage and the real estate industry that they're not going to do that, and they should. Because the reality is the situation, the easiest way to solve this will be to actually go to the the investors that are behind these mortgage servicing companies, and tell them, look, for now, you're going to have to actually suspend, your obligation and your interest that you're collecting. And that's really what it is. If you look at your mortgage payment is broken up into 4 parts: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. The interest part is the money that the investors are collecting. These are investors that are all a part of a 6,800 member organization. And they are the guys who are basically part of the secondary mortgage market that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac sells off the loans to. So what they do is they hold your mortgage note, and every month when you make your mortgage payment, that interest portion, they are collecting their interest on it. The easiest way for us to solve the issue that we can have here, which is going to be a widespread epidemic all over around the country, and not only around the country, the U.S., but all around the world, is to actually go to those servicers and say, look, you're going to have to suspend your payments right now, because reality is that this is going to be the only way to solve it. Sending checks of $2,000 or $1,000 to every American, that's all good and well. That's just like a Band-Aid. There's some people who $1,000 is not going to really do much for, because think about it. Just your energy bill alone, your electricity bill. Most people, their electricity bill, I can tell you here where we are in New Jersey, it averages around $300 a month. So when you take that and you start to add in things like water, other utilities, things that have to be paid, $1,000 really is like nothing. And it's not going to really solve the biggest issue that most people have. The reason why most people work and the reason why most people fight to be able to keep their income coming in is because they want to keep a roof over their head. And those 2 obligations have to do with their mortgage and their rent. So basically, if you have a situation where if you're a single family homeowner, if they suspend mortgage payments, that will help you, because in the interim, you don't have to have that burden on your head of, oh, I have to meet my mortgage payment this month, because it's suspended for the meantime. Similarly, people who actually own multifamily properties like myself, who have tenants, well, if I know that my mortgage is suspended, then the pressure then is taken off the tenants and their obligation to pay the rent. So it's kind of like a domino effect, but in the positive direction, where you have people who are now able to have relief from dealing with their mortgage obligation and their rent obligation in the interim while this stuff gets sorted out. We don't know how long this is going to take. We don't know what's going to happen as far as, how once they find a cure, what the semblance or when we will get back to a sense of normalcy. But one thing I can share with you is that crisis is crisis. Some are larger than others. The reality is that a crisis is something that most times what happens is not the crisis itself, is the problem in the aftermath of the crisis. It's what happens in the aftermath. That's where the danger points are, and that's where most people lose it. And so what I did, because I know that most likely the federal government won't go to these servicers, because these servicers have a government organization called the Federal Home Loan Banking System. And basically what they do is they service and they deal with all the servicers that are behind your mortgage payment. And it's very easy for them to actually go as a government body to these servicers and say to them, listen, the way we're going to deal with this is you're going to have to suspend your interest payments, because that's really what it is. When they bought the notes from Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, they bought the notes from them for pennies on a dollar. So you might have a $400,000 debt on your property, but they bought that debt for maybe $70,000, $60,000. So it's not like their principal and their core payment is being affected. This is just interest that they're collecting. This could be a private individual, it could be a REIT, it could be an institution, but the fact is that they're part of this member body, and they are the ones who are really calling the shots when it comes to the servicing of your mortgage, because any changes that have to be done regarding your property and your mortgage, whether it's a loan modification, whether it's a forbearance agreement, whether it is a repayment plan, the servicer calls up the investor, so to speak. And then what they'll do is they'll say to the investor, this homeowner, this loan number is here, they want to do X amount, and will you allow them to do it? And the investor looks at the file. If they feel like it's in their best interest, they go ahead and allow it. All those things actually cascade on down from the investors. They have an obligation to actually connect with the Federal Home Loan Banking System. And so it's very easy for them to institute probably a moratorium with these servicers to allow people to be able to suspend mortgages in America. That is the ideal and the most practical solution to deal with this. Getting $2,000, $1,000 a month from the government or just as a payout for every American is not going to do anything. It's not going to help solve the issue. The problem that I see coming and the wave of foreclosures that I see coming is going to be astronomical because it's the domino effect. And the fact is that this is something that has affected the world. And as we know, the world is a smaller place now. So there are interconnections. I have clients who have businesses overseas. They have family overseas. This is just a widespread issue and it's going to affect industry. And so you have economies like Canada, Spain, Italy, who've done this and actually has brought relief to their people. But the thing is that with the U.S., obviously, you know, our system is a little bit different. These are mortgage notes that are held by private investors, private institutions that actually call the shots on the servicing and they want to collect their interest. So like you take a country like Italy, whose mortgage market is like 253 billion. But then when you look at it versus ours, and our mortgage debt is in the neighborhood of 11.9 trillion. That's a lot of money. So now the thing about it is that how do you solve it? How do you fix it? The best way to do it is to actually go at the investor that's behind the servicer of your mortgage company. And that's the only way because because we don't know if this is going to take 3 months, we don't know if it's going to take 4 months, we don't know how long the crisis is going to last. But even if the crisis seems to resolve itself, it's going to affect people differently. Some people will be able to recover from this faster. Some people won't be able to recover from this. As we see, there are families who are losing family members to the virus. There are people who are having their life turned upside down. There are people who are depending on the healthcare system to be able to help them survive. And you have things like, you know, non-emergency surgeries being put off. The hospitals are inundated. So there are people who are having health issues and challenges from this, not even, you know, having to deal with the financial side, but it will because it will affect them because it's going to put things off. And so what I've done is I've created a foreclosure crisis guide to be able to help you. Since I truly believe in my heart that the federal government is not going to force the creditors and the investors that are behind your servicing, your mortgage servicing companies to be able to suspend mortgages in the U.S., then what we have to do is we have to try to force their hand. And we have to actually try to put our foot forward and basically see how we can get our mortgages suspended. And so I've created a foreclosure crisis guide. And it's a guide that actually will show you a number of key things that you need to know. Taking it from someone who's gone through different crises in my lifetime that I've actually bounced back from. And by God's grace, I've been able to navigate my way through. And I know what it's like to be able to deal with facing debt, facing something that is going to be impossible, facing foreclosure and looming foreclosure, not knowing where your family's going to be, not knowing if you're going to basically be able to survive, not knowing if you're going to basically ever recover from this situation. This foreclosure crisis guide will help you. It's going to share with you the first 3 things that you need to do in order to be able to start this process. And also, one important thing it's going to share with you is timing, because timing is very important. When do you start? How quickly do you move? What do you need to do, and how do you need to start the process immediately? The other thing that you're going to need that I've included in the guide are 2 key letters that you need to be able to show and share with the mortgage companies that are going to help you to be able to accomplish getting this done, getting your mortgage suspended. The other thing that will also be included in the guide is a special request that you'll need to be able to have as part of your arsenal in dealing with the bank. So to get the foreclosure crisis guide, you can start by simply downloading my free stock foreclosure guide. Just click the link below and you'll be able to get that stock foreclosure guide and you can start the process from there. So I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Till the next time, I do want to leave you with this scripture. With all the news going on, there's a lot of fear and gloom that is in the world, and a lot of people are panicking and running in chaos. But Psalm 91, which is a key scripture, this is something that I've used over the years and I've used time and time again in my moments of trial. I turn to it because when it comes to these types of situations, it's all about who is your refuge. Your refuge. Who's your fortress? Where do you turn to? Some people turn to different things. You can turn to stuff that will actually pacify your pain. You can turn to things that will basically just smooth over it. Or you can turn to sources. My source is God. And so I turn to Him, and Psalm 91 spells it out. One of my favorite scriptures that I use in time of crisis, in time of hopelessness, in time of fear, where there's no stability, where doesn't seem to be a way out, and I'm in like a maze and I'm trapped, and I'm wondering if everything's going to crash in on me, and I don't know where I'm going to turn. It's all about who's your source. It's all about who your true source is, who your trust is in. If your trust is in the economy, we see that that's failing. If your trust is in yourself, we see that you can't depend on you because you're actually subject to the circumstances around you. If you are ready to go out and work, what happens if you can't work? What happens if there's no jobs? If you are depending on other people, what happens if they fail you? You need to have God and God only as your source. It's very important. This stuff that I've learned over the years because, like I shared before, I've been through a lot of crisis and I've been through a lot of tragedy. And I can share with you that because God is my source, and only because God is my source, that's the only way I've been able to come out, be here, establish an academy, establish a place for you guys to be able to share my, basically my calling, my giftings with you. And so it's the only thing that makes me the man that I am today is because that God has been my source. He continues to be my source. Psalm 91, it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will remain secure and rest in the shadow of the Almighty, whose power no enemy can withstand. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge, He is my fortress. In God alone will I trust. For He will save you from the fowler and from the noisome pestilence." Noise and pestilence meaning viruses, diseases, things like corona, things like swine flu, other diseases that are in the world. He will save you from them. He will keep you secure from them. He will protect you from them. He will cover you completely and protect you with pinions, and under His wings of refuge will you find yourself. His faithfulness will shield you and wall you. You will not be afraid of terror by night, nor for the arrows by day, nor of pestilence and talks of darkness, nor of destruction. God will secure you. So that's just a little glimpse of a few of the scriptures from Psalm 91, 1 through 6. You can please read that, and you can read more because basically it shows you about the protection that God will give you in spite of whatever the news is saying, in spite of what is out there and the threats that are out there. We do have a promise that God will secure you. He will keep you. He will protect you in spite of the danger that's out there. That is where you escape what seems to be, I would say, the norm. You escape and your confidence is in somewhere in the invincible where you put your trust in Him. You put your guidance, your movements, your plans in His hands so that He can help you, guide you through. And I can tell you, that's the only way I've been able to survive. With all the things I've gone through, I thought that I'd seen it all. And this year, in February, what my wife and my family, what we went through, I can't tell you, if I didn't have God as my source, I don't know if I will even be alive to be able to sit here and do this video. So I just want to share with you that there is a way, even in spite of what it may seem like. Coronavirus, foreclosures, filings piling up, uncertainty, no income, not having money to be able to buy things that, bare necessities. There is a way out. What we want to do basically is help you through this foreclosure crisis guide to first attack one of the key components, because what you need to do right now is get your obligations, your monthly obligations, your largest monthly obligations suspended, and at least have a fighting chance to be able to start that process while everything else sorts itself out. We will be we will be talking about more income hacks that we can use in this situation, specifically in these crisis things. I'm going to be doing web classes starting, immediately in the academy to help us navigate and know what we can do right now to be able to get income in the moment of crisis. Crisis is not something that everybody deals with. You have to be able to know how to navigate through crisis. This is not something that you can read a book on. You have to have experience on knowing this is what I do in a situation of crisis. And that's what you need to be focused on right now. What do you do in this moment of crisis? How do you face this situation? Because even if you're not susceptible to the virus, or you're not buying into the news and you're not thinking that it's serious, the fact is that we see that everyone's been affected by it. And so there's all about how we go about dealing with it to be able to help, first of all, suspend our obligation, and then secondly, generate income. So those are the things that we want to share with you. Please start by downloading my free foreclosure guide and my stock foreclosure guide below, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thank you.